Assalamu alaikum. Welcome all to Easy Humanity channel. This is a video series about the general anatomy of the nervous system. In this series of video, I try to discuss key topics that are essential to understanding and further studying the nervous system. If you find this video helpful, please support the channel by subscribing, sharing them. So without delay, let's start the video. These are the topics discussing in part 1 of the general anatomy of the nervous system. Nervous system is formed by the nervous tissue, which is composed of neuron and neuroglia. These are the main function of nervous system. Nervous system collects sensory information from external world and also from within the body by the sensory neuron. And this sensory neuron convey this message into the central nervous system. Within the central nervous system, this information is processed. So another important function of the brain can process this information and making an appropriate response. Appropriate response is carried by the motor nerve, and motor nerve innervate a skeletal muscle or effector organ and causes appropriate response. For example, contraction of the voluntary muscle. Now the classification of the nervous systems. Structurally or anatomically, nervous system are two types: central nervous system, brain and spinal cord; peripheral nervous system, the cranial nerves and spinal nerves, and some autonomic nerves. This is the location of the cranial nerves. This is the location of the spinal nerves. Functionally, nervous system can be classified into two types: somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. Both somatic and autonomic nervous system has two parts: sensory part and motor part. The sensory part of the somatic nervous system collects sensory information from the external world, and the motor part of the somatic nervous system innervate skeletal muscle and causes movement. So, somatic nervous system is control voluntary function of the body. The sensory part of the autonomic nervous system collects sensory information within the internal organ, and motor part of the autonomic nervous system innervate smooth muscle cell, cardiac muscle cell, and gland. This is the involuntary structure. So, involuntary function is maintained by the autonomic nervous system, voluntary function is maintained by the somatic nervous system. So, this is the somatic nervous system, innervate skeletal muscle. This is the autonomic nervous system, innervate smooth muscle cell, cardiac muscle cell, and gland. Somatic nervous system collects sensory information from the external world. Autonomic nervous system collects sensory information from the internal environment of the body. Nervous tissue. Nervous tissue is formed by the excitable cell neuron and non-excitable cell neuroglia, and no extracellular matrix. This is the histological image of the nervous tissue showing a neuron, and this is the nucleus of the neuroglia. Neuroglia are 10 times more than the neuron. Neuron contain a special type of organelle, Nissel's granule. Nissel's granule is formed by the iron, ribosome, and rough endoplasmic reticulum. So, what is the structure is this? This net-like pinkish structure is nothing but the processes of neuron and neuroglia. So, some students confuse this area as extracellular matrix. No, this is the processes of the neuron and neuroglia. Now, part of the neuron. Neuron has cell body and processes. Dendrites is one or more than one. Axon is always one. Within the dendrites, organelle, Nissel's granules are present. Within the axon, Nissel's granule is absent, but mitochondria is present, and this is a special type area of the nerve cell body where organelles are absent. This area is known as the axon hillock. From axon hillock, axon is arises. Classification of the neuron. There are several classification of the neuron according to the polarity. It is unipolar, pseudo-unipolar, bipolar, multipolar. So this is unipolar, this is bipolar, this is pseudo-unipolar because it has only one process, but it divided into two processes, the peripheral process and central process. Peripheral process is act like dendrite, central process is act like axon. Why it is pseudo-unipolar? Because embryologically they are bipolar neuron, but these two process is fused and partially fused, so this is known as the pseudo-unipolar. So the example of the unipolar neuron is mesencephalic neuron of the trigeminal nerve, pseudo-unipolar neuron in the dorsal root ganglia, bipolar cell in the retina, multipolar the pyramidal cell in cerebrum. According to the function, neurons are sensory, motor, interneuron. The unipolar, pseudo-unipolar, bipolar neurons are sensory neuron. The motor neuron are multipolar neuron. Interneuron, they are not sensory, not motor, just connect sensory or motor neuron in functional circuit of the nervous system, and they are usually multipolar neuron. So this is thus a pseudo-unipolar sensory neuron, one process divided into two. This is peripheral process, this is central process. The terminal portion of the peripheral process is from a specialized structure, receptor receives sensory information, and this sensory information is carried by the peripheral process. Then central process is directly sometimes synapse with the motor neuron and sometimes it's synapse with the interneuron. Interneuron again synapse with the motor neuron, and axon of the motor neuron known as the motor nerve. The terminal portion of the axon of the motor neuron from neuromuscular junction, which attaches with the skeletal muscle, and action potential of this nerve circuit is reach the skeletal muscle, and contraction of the skeletal muscle is occur. The classification of the neuron according to the size of the nerve fiber, length of the axon and dendrite. Golgi type 1 neuron. The axon of this neuron are long and maybe 1 meter or more. Example, pyramidal cells of the cerebral cortex, Purkinje cell of the cerebellum. Golgi type 2 neurons, short axon that synapse with nearby cell body. Neurons are star-shaped and found in the cerebral and cerebellar cortexes and retina. The development of the neuron is developed from the neuroectoderm. This is ectoderm. This ectoderm is divided into two parts. This is the neural plate. It became neuroectoderm, and this is became surface ectoderm. This is neural plate, and this is neural group, this is neural fold. Two neural fold is come closer and form a tube, and this tube is detached from the surface ectoderm. So it's make the neural tube, and this neural tube is formed by the neuroectoderm. So histology of this wall of the neural tube is look like this. Here the neuroblast is formed. So this is all about general anatomy of the nervous system of part 2. If you like this video, please press the like button and please subscribe my channel. Thank you for watching.